Discuss the ins, discuss the outs, and let's talk about. Let's talk about. Let's talk about.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of Let's Talk About the Arts Instagram live series. Excited to be here again with a new guest. I'm joined by a friend this evening and a wonderful choreographer, Pippa Holliday. I can see loads of people joining here, and I can see that Pippa's joined, which is amazing. So I'm going to get into giving my introduction to the wonderful Pippa. So Pippa is a choreographer from Australia, but she's based in London. I met Pippa I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. We were both doing a show. So we were doing a show called The World of Musicals, which was a musical theatre show. I was hired as a vocalist, but I was aware that there was going to be some dance involved, which I was quite excited about, actually. I was in no way a dancer. So I kind of came to day one of rehearsal, and Pippa Holliday was there. That's 2 L's if you want to go look her up. And she was the choreographer, and it was the most amazing 2 weeks. Pippa completely supported me through this new experience of learning choreography in such a short amount of time, learning moves that I never thought I'd be capable of doing. But not only did she support me through it, she really challenged me as well, which I really, really respected in her. A couple of months later, we actually found ourselves back in the same show, but this time, the first time we were going to Germany, and this time we were going to America. We rehearsed in Dublin. We met up a few times in London. Very international friendship. And it was during the America rehearsal period, that we got even closer. We formed a stronger connection, and we just really gelled. And it was really nice to come from 2 different art forms and come together and really find this lovely connection. I remember such fond memories, in particular one of me and Pippa sitting up one night in Trim, where we rehearsed, drinking a bottle of wine and just learning about each other and having the chats. And, ever since then, I think that was the night I was kind of like, okay, this girl is awesome. From then in rehearsals, a little personal thing in rehearsals, Pippa would always be like, Fabian, can you move to the side? Fabian, can you do this? And I'd be like, who is Fabian? Turns out I reminded Pippa of a friend called Fabian. So I was Fabian, and I soon took that on as my dance alter ego. So me and Pippa always have a laugh around that. So if she calls me Fabian tonight, that's the reason. And then one of my proudest moments was I ended up in her show reel for that year that we went to Germany, which was so awesome. So she's an amazing, amazing choreographer. She had an amazing career as a dancer. So this evening, we're going to kind of get into her career as a dancer and what it taught her as a choreographer. We're going to get into what she expects from her dancers, from her performers, the challenges she overcome to create the style and creative output that she puts out there. We're going to actually discuss about working with people who aren't primarily from your discipline. And we're going to, because we both had that experience, we're going to kind of like get into that with each other. And to finish off, we're going to let you know about another talent of Pippa's, but we're going to save that as a surprise until the end. But if and when festivals are back up and running, after you find out about this little talent, I think you'll be getting on to Pippa to get a little bespoke number. But for now, I'm going to have a little search for Pippa. There she is. I'm going to start going. The return of Pippa and Fabian.
Hello.
Hello. How are we?
Oh my God, I forgot about the Fabian thing till you just said that, and I was like, oh my God, yeah. Yeah, I'm good.
I've never forgotten about it. I'm like, that is my alter ego as a dancer.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the ponytail is a lot longer. In rehearsals then, it was only like that long, and it just sat as like a little pineapple on my head, but I had to get it out of my eyes. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a bit
Oh
of a
my
crazy
God.
day. I've been Zooming for 8 hours from the lounge,
Lovely,
dancing
lovely.
around.
How's all that going?
Yeah, it's fine. It's you know how it is. It's good to I just said
Yeah,
to my students today, I was like, it's so good Zoom is around and like, you know, all this technology that we can
absolutely.
actually do it. Imagine if like this had been like 30 years ago and everyone would just be at home, like as much as we all go, oh my God, Zoom again, like it's great that we've got it and like you can just
Absolutely.
and still keep up your classes
Yeah.
and things. So
It's a
yeah.
way, exactly. It's a way of keeping things going and a way of connecting with each other still, and just being able to see other people's faces and going, hey, okay, you're still out there.
Yeah.
I'd love, say again.
Oh no, I just was agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. We're in agreement.
Yeah.
I'd love to get into it, and I'd love to first ask you about your journey as a dancer, and your career, but in particular, what you learned as a dancer growing up through your career that led you to your path as a choreographer, because I know that's where you say you found your kind of true passion.
Yeah. So I started dancing when I was like 2. I think probably because I was possibly the most hyperactive child you've ever met in your life, I think my parents would say. And I just couldn't sit still, which I can't right now. I'm like proper like moving my feet around under the table, which
I
is what I
know.
did
I
for
have a
my entire
swivelly chair, so that keeps me kind of entertained.
life. So yeah, I started dancing when I was like 2. And then growing up, I think by the time I was 8, I was so like, right, that's it. I'm going to be a dancer. This is all I care about. Boom. So it was literally set out from then. And I did all the like competitions as a kid. I was literally, you know, proper typical dance kid, going to competitions, doing all the exams, that kind of
Yeah,
thing. So I always knew it was something that I wanted to do. But I did a lot of like in these competitions, sometimes you get those choreography sections where you like go and choreograph your own dances. And I think at my dance school when I was like a kid, like they knew that I had like the talent to do it and stuff and you know the drive. I'd say the drive more than anything. But it's that thing of like I was never like a favorite, you know, these favorites that every dance teacher has, which every dance teacher probably does have, not gonna lie. Um, you obviously to me, baby. And like I was never a favorite, so I think that really pushed me. And I never used to maybe get like the best solos. There'd always be another girl in my age group that would get like the better choreography, and so then they'd always end up doing slightly better. So I got to an age and I was like, I'm going to choreograph my own dances. And as soon as I did that, I'd like choreograph duets with my sister. I'd choreograph my own solos. Like as soon as I did that, I started like winning stuff, and I'd be like, okay, so maybe I'm like actually all right at that as well. And I don't know, it's that thing as well, isn't it, where you start like when you're kids, you just mess around with your friends choreographing dances. I mean, I'm
yeah.
sure would say they did that in the playground and stuff. And yeah,
I love
kind of
that. Yeah.
yeah.
I never knew
Um,
that about you. I never knew that that was like, it was so early on. For some
yeah,
reason, I had in my head that you were like, I'm going to be a dancer, and you chased the career and then started moving into choreography. But I love that that was there from such an early age.
yeah, no, I always loved it. And then I think at quite a young age, I started teaching at my dance school. So I think I was about 15, and I found it absolutely hilarious because one of my primary school teachers used to come to adult tap and I was the teacher. And she was obviously like in her 40s. And I was like, I'm your teacher now. And I was this 15-year-old kid that thinks everything.
Yeah.
Cringe.
Stage skill brash.
Yeah. And then I went to Italia Conti in London for 3 years and did the dance course there. And again, actually, when I was in third year, we had to tour like a play, which obviously I did musical theatre, so you know, singing, dancing, and acting. But I'm always like I was a dancer who sang and acted a little bit. I would never say I'm like a triple threat. But I
Okay.
always wanted to go into musical theatre. So when we did this play, I was like, oh God, we've got to do a play. You know, this is my worst nightmare, like doing a Shakespearean play. And I remember our director, David, was literally like, right, I need someone to choreograph. I was like, me. He ended up doing all the choreo for it as well. And I was like, oh, this is cool as well. So it's always a thing on the side. And then I think when I
Yeah.
did graduate and went into dancing, like, I did cruise ships, and then I went into musicals, like I did Grease, and then actually I ended up working for the company that we met working for,
Yeah.
and I did like their Tina Turner musical over in Germany. So I did that, and then I was like dance captain on that, which again is that role kind of stepping into, you're obviously not choreographing, but you're stepping into that kind of manager role of like making sure that,
Absolutely.
you know, from like what ended and stuff on tour. And
Yeah.
sometimes having to make little changes. If someone's sick, you rearrange the staging. And I thought, yeah, this is like something I really like doing. And that was actually my last long contract, like performing, before I went into doing more full-time teaching and choreography. So yeah, that's
I
pretty
love that. I love that.
yeah.
I'd love to get into talking about kind of the role as a dancer from your point of view. And from having worked as a professional dancer, like, what did you learn along the way that you actually have kept with you and brought into your path as a choreographer?
Brought into my path as a choreographer. I think like it's things like, one of the things I'd say to dancers more is like, don't always take everything personally. And I think I didn't
Okay.
realize it till I choreographed. And I'll come on something about auditions in a minute. But like, well, this kind of goes hand in hand with that. There's sometimes you can be the best dancer in the room. You can be the best dancer on stage. You can be the best dancer in an audition. Doesn't mean you'll get the job. Doesn't mean, you know, that you are going to be perfect for that particular number.
Yeah.
So I think as a dancer, you always strive to be the best and you always want to be the best. So it's really hard if you are and you see someone next to you and you think, okay, I can kick my legs higher than them. I'm doing more turns than them. I'm performing better than them. But
Yeah.
you're then not getting that job or not going on to that next step. That's what I think is quite hard. But when you see it from the other side,
Yeah.
it's really interesting, because I remember like auditioning for a show. Well, I was choreographing, and there was this girl in the room, and I was like, to the rest of my panel, I was literally like, okay, we have to have her. She is amazing. Like my absolute favorite of the whole day. I was like, she is phenomenal. And they were like, there just is not a place in the show for her. Like she does not fit any of the characters. And I'm like, right, well, we need to do something. We need to move people around because we have to have this girl. Which was so good.
Yeah.
And they're like, Pippa, they're literally, it like, there is not a place. I was like, oh. So I made a point
Yeah.
of her and being like, you are my favorite of the whole day. I just want to say thank you, even if you don't get this job. Like, you're really great, and please don't forget that, because I think it's so easy as a dancer to get despondent. Like I remember going to audition after audition and just being like, no, 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 all the time, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. And you know what? I think you've raised like a really good point there. In sometimes it is nothing to do with your talent. Sometimes it is nothing to do with you. Probably most of the time, because the panels are looking for a specific thing, and you just mightn't fit that. But most of the time we walk away from auditions and you're like, well, I'm shit at this, and I wasn't good enough there, and I didn't hit that note, and I didn't kick my leg high enough. And actually that had nothing to do with it. It was just that, you know, you didn't fit a role. And I would love if that was more, you know, if we took that on more on the audition circuit, so we could walk away and be like, oh, I didn't get that role. You might have thought you'd be great in the role, but maybe they didn't see it because they have a different vision. And it's nothing to do with your talent. I think that's so important that you've raised that.
Yeah. So I think that's a thing definitely that I learned, well, transitioning to choreographer more than dancer. And I wish more dancers knew that. And like also when you walk into the room, the panel want you to be good. I think people come in and they're so nervous and they're like, I even see it, it's crazy when I like teach students and they have this like amazing bubbly personality, and you get to that audition or you make them dance one at a time in like a room and they crumble, and it's like, you're doing exactly what you were doing 1 second ago, but now it's just everyone's concentrating on you. And it's like, we want you to be good. No, like you get the nerves, don't you? And you're like, oh my God, I can't do it. But everyone else wants you to. They'd rather see you mess up. Like I'd rather see you fall over and mess up and like try and go for it than go into themselves. So but it is hard to understand until I mean, I'm guilty of it. Till I was on that other side,
we all are
too. So yeah.
And absolutely, I've sat on some panels and you are literally, you want to be entertained and you're also there going, come on, you've got this, you know, and you notice a lot of the things that people don't even notice about themselves or know about themselves.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, and it's also the thing we want to do. So, you know, we should be like jumping up there. But I completely understand it's judgment. We're going in there, we feel like we're being judged. But I
Yeah.
think that I've been told that a few times, like, you know, people want to see you do well, so go in and like give them a show. But then it's a different story when you're in the situation.
It is, yeah. Of course.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
yeah, no, you were going to say something about auditions there. Did you say
I think that was it, the story about the
that was
girl.
it?
He actually did get the
Okay.
job in the end because someone
Yay,
got out on. I was like,
she
yes.
segued into it. So I
Yeah.
suppose this is along the same line, but what would be your kind of like do's and don'ts for dancers coming up now? Having kind of, I suppose, been out of the dance game for so long and been on the choreographer side for so long, what are
Hmm.
your do's and don'ts now, of maybe of dancers training or dancers like in the career?
Dancers training, your teacher's always right. My dancers that are on right now, no. I think when I was at college, I'm not going to lie, I was a bit cheeky. I think you will
Yeah,
probably know this from meeting me, you know what I'm like. And
yes,
there are a few times when I thought, oh, like, I don't know, like people tell you stuff and you're like, just like take it on, even if it's like something you don't agree with, you just nod, you agree, you take it on and you work on it. Because there's so many times now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like I'll say
I
things,
wish I listened.
yeah. And I'm like,
Yes,
that would have been so much easier. You don't want to make enemies. That's another thing. Like everyone, you're not going to get on with everyone. You're never ever going to be everyone's cup of tea. Nor are
yeah,
you going to go in and every choreographer's automatically going to love you, no matter how good you are. Like,
yeah,
not everyone's going to like you. Doesn't mean you start making enemies. You need to, this industry is so small. Like,
yeah.
people know people. I've had so many phone calls, like, oh, do you know this person? And I'm like, yeah. And
Hmm.
if they're amazing, you're like, wow, da, da, da. Like sing their
And
praises.
you know, even if you're amazing, like an amazing talent, personality and what you're like in the rehearsal room or in the audition room always comes into it, because someone will always be like, amazing talent, they do all these things, their energy in the room, you know. So that is an important part. I think that's a really important thing to raise to all performers, not just dancers.
An important part for me. Personality's a really big one. Like, especially if you're going to be going away and working. Like when we did rehearsals, we were over in Dublin. We were in like we were put up in this gorgeous hotel, but it's literally in the countryside, isn't it? And well, it's not
Yeah,
even in Dublin, it's just outside of Dublin.
yeah,
And you have got to get on with people. If you're going to go on tour and live on a tour bus, you need to get on with people. Personality is so important. I
yeah.
want to see, like, especially as a choreographer, I want to see these people getting on and making attempts to get on with each other. And you come in a room and you get a vibe for someone, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, they'll be all right if you stick them with 20 other people on tour. Like, you're
Do
not
you
going to be
think
worried.
Do you think it ever, would you, when working with the cast, would you ever be able to sense if people got on or didn't get on, like outside of the rehearsal rooms from working with the group?
I don't think you can. I mean, you hear chat, don't you? So that
Yeah.
sometimes you can. You notice little looks sometimes, and you're like, "Oh, did I just see that?" Although I sometimes think I've seen something, and then I'm like, "Oh no, I think I was completely wrong there." But you
Okay.
do definitely get a vibe for people,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
100%. So yeah, you've got to.
Awesome.
Personality is very important. I agree.
I love that. And I think sometimes when you're training, you can become so focused on your craft. And, you know, you have to remember you're going into an industry and a business. So you got
Mhm.
to think all round. I'd love to move it into talking about your style, the Pippa Holiday choreographer style. Where
Oh
do
God.
you think, first of all, how would you kind of describe your style? And then where do you think it came from? Like from stuff that you've been through, but also maybe other influences?
Yeah. I'd say my style is quite fast. I think you might agree with me.
Yes. Even the first time I worked with you, and we had 2 weeks to put together the show, and I will never forget Jingle Bells. And I still think the first like 3 or 4 shows that were up and running, I still wasn't doing the choreography right. I was still learning it. It was so fast.
Yeah. I think quite like I like fast, I like travel-y stuff. So this whole lockdown period's been really interesting for me with like, you know, zooming and being in a small space because a lot of my stuff, I like formations, I like traveling back and forth. So keeping stuff
Yeah,
small has been really interesting. I'd say like quite like it depends in what context, because obviously if it's in like a musical theatre show, you've got to keep it within the bounds of that. I'm not going to be doing like leaping around the stage, but in a more
yeah.
pure dance thing, I do think quite athletic and, you know,
Okay.
my pace. I always think like my biggest influence was probably like musical theatre growing up.
Yeah.
I think there's been a lot of times I've watched musicals and I'm not completely satisfied with like the dance content in them. I'm like, oh my God, if I did this, I'm sure every choreographer does this. But I'm like, if I did this, it would be way more full out. Or so I
Yeah.
think very, yeah, full out. I'm quite a stickler for like technique, so quite technical.
Okay.
I'm working with like pure dancers for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and just a lot of, yeah, just fast paced and keep it exciting. Even my
I
lyrical
love it.
quite fast. I'm like, we're doing lyrical today, and people are like, oh, good, a bit of a break. And I'm like, mm-mm.
Not a chance. We're going to be keep on moving.
Yeah.
Moving into kind of talking about your choreographer style, when you're working with your dancers, and I know you work with quite a range of dancers, like from young to like young adults, right up to professionals. Like, what do you expect from them in the room? And I'd love you to speak more so from like, what they bring in their expression and their identity. You said you're a real stickler for technique, but let's say, they're bringing the technique, they're bringing all the moves. What are you looking to create that magic?
Um, you're definitely right. Like on the technique thing, I love technique, but then I feel like
Yeah.
as soon as I choreograph, that kind of goes out the window. The technique's like obviously really important when you're training, but in choreography,
Mm,
I'm always going to pick a performer over a like wonderful technician. You can be the most amazing technical dancer, but if you are boring, no one wants to watch you. And I
yeah.
think that's a real big thing for me.
And
Like,
what do you think that is? Where do you think like let's say someone, I hate the word boring, but let's say someone
yeah,
wasn't bringing the performance value. Do you know what I mean? What could you say to them to pull it out of them, or how could you like speak to them, or advice could you give them to go, we need a little bit more behind the eyes, let's say.
yeah. Well, it's interesting because obviously what you were saying about working with different ages, there's different levels you can take it to. When you're working with professionals, it is a bit easier to dig a bit deeper because they're used to kind of
Yeah.
working that way and draw from maybe something that has happened or, that kind of thing. Which obviously when you're working with an 8-year-old, you're not going to be like, right, I need you to really think back to that time when, your cat died and like, I don't know.
Traumatize the kid.
Yeah, but it is really interesting because I think so many people surprise me in I'll think someone's going to be really good at something and I'll be like, right, come up, like perform this piece or something, and they do it, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And then someone else who I do not expect comes up, and when you like get shivers and you're like, oh, and you're right, it's that performance thing. They'll pull something
Yeah.
special out, and you're just like, okay, you have got it.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say like, because some like 8-year-olds do have it.
Oh
They
yeah,
just
God,
have it.
little girl
Yeah,
who's
but it's something, I don't think it's something you probably can explain, but it's interesting to ask the question to see if you can tie together answers, because we are both teachers. So it's sometimes interesting to be like, this student just gets it and this student needs to work a little bit more in that area. And I'm always like, it's life experience, it's things
yeah.
you've been through. But like then when you talk about 8-year-olds, like it is sometimes a feeling that they already have, or maybe an emotional maturity. I don't know. Like, it's just such an interesting topic to answer,
I
you know.
don't, you can't teach it. And if you did teach it, it wouldn't be right because it would be so superficial. Like,
I struggle, you see, I do struggle with this. I'm like, I want to be like, yeah, okay, you can't teach it, but also, do you think you can find it?
I think you can find it. Like, you can push stuff till it gets to a point, but I think it will just come to you when it does. Like, I would even say
Mm,
with myself, I was always, I feel like, focus on the technical, which is probably why I love technique so much because that was like what I really liked. I was always one of those kids that would go, oh, I'll do it when I get on stage, and I never did it. And even through college, I did this, and I was in class, I would not be a performer. And I remember, like, it took me, like, I had a few small jobs, but it took me a few years to get like a job after college. And I
Yeah.
remember just being like, right, this is it. I'm sick of like all these other girls who are not, basically what I was saying earlier, not dancing as well as me, getting jobs. And I was like, I know what it is. It's like my performance. And slowly, you have to just let go of your inhibitions and just do it. People just get scared, and you feel vulnerable, don't you?
Yeah.
Want to get
And I
the-
think as well, something you always made us do in rehearsals as well, you were like, full out, full out. Like, we didn't get it. Like, you know, a lot of people would kind of mark something or say, I'm just going to like have a break. And you were like, absolutely not. Is that something that you hold in your rehearsal rooms? And is one of the reasons because you're like, you won't do it on stage if you're half-assing it now?
Yeah, absolutely. And you get another thing that sometimes people do that thing where they surprise you on stage and it's too much, and you're like, oh no, this is like an ensemble number, especially as like a choreographer, unless you are choreographing that lead person and then, you know, the dancers behind. If you get that one person that's sticking out and is like a scene stealer, as we call it,
Yeah.
it can ruin the whole, you know, essence of the number, can't it? So it's
Yeah,
that sort of like,
absolutely.
it has to be full out, and you have to be doing it at the level you're going to do it on stage. Because nerves do like play a funny role sometimes, and you do step it up, and you do panic and go overboard. And yeah,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
why I like it, like just done, like you just got to get used to doing it, the level you're going to do it. And it's for stamina as well.
I know, because we were exhausted in those rehearsals. Well, I was down the back going, Jesus.
I was just sitting on my chair at the front shouting, and you were all like, I'm going to bed
I was
after
like,
I'm going to get a glass of wine.
well,
Anyway,
some of us, you went to get a glass of wine, some of us went to bed, me, and then some of the other castmates would go and rehearse. And I was like,
yes,
oh God. I was like, I'm definitely not a dancer at heart, because I'm going to bed and having a nice meal and getting into bed and relaxing after my body has been, you know, battered and bruised all day. And that's one thing I admire so much in dancers, is they just keep going. You know, there's no breaks, you know, on their breaks, they're either stretching or going over something. And that was a real, you know, learning curve for me, to see people do that and go, wow, that's quite incredible. Would you instill something like that in your dancers?
yeah. I know you want to talk about something with me later, but I did a project during lockdown, which we will get onto later, and
Yeah.
had three amazing dancers, like gorgeous, three of my graduates, and I had my best friend was assisting me on it, doing all the filming, and he kept going, right, girls, you can go and have a break now. And they were like, no, we're fine. And we've been going for hours. Like, I was literally like, again, do it again. And we're talking, it was full out choreo, jumps, like legs, turns, everything. And
Yeah.
like, no, it's fine, we can carry on. And he was like, no, honestly, go and have a break. And he was like, give them a break. They've been going for ages. And I was like, no, they're fine. Like, so yeah, it was funny.
They're Pippa Holliday dancers.
Yeah, they know how to keep
And
up.
yeah, we are going to get to that performance because it's amazing. But I suppose, just while we're in this choreographer chat, how we met was in a cast where the levels were like quite mixed. So I came in not as a dancer, other people came in as trained dancers, other people had danced before, you know, and it was quite a mixed bag for you. And you were amazing. Like, you were able to get this like choreography which looked amazing, made everyone looked amazing, challenged everyone in the room. It didn't matter about their style. Like, what was that experience like for you? And I suppose, how did you think about that? Did you think, like, you know, this is my vision, you got to the rehearsal room and then you had to adapt? Or did you think, I know the capabilities are going to be on a spectrum, so I'm going to go in with these ideas and develop them?
So I was brought in for that job kind of last minute the first time I did it. Because I'd worked with the company before, obviously they got in touch. So I hadn't been at auditions or anything. So I didn't even know the level of dancers I was going to get. And you know, people will go, oh yeah, pretty much how you just described it actually. People will go, oh, okay, there's like some that are, you know, movers and some that are really dancey. I was like, okay. And as you also know, we had to do 33 numbers or something, I think it was, in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
So I was
it
like,
was insane.
yeah. So I had everything planned out and I had that vision before. And I think I always do kind of approach it this way. Like I'll think, like I'll listen to the music and I'll know what I want to do. I'll know what kind of formations I want. I'll know what story you want to tell within that piece and how you want it to look. But you're right,
Yeah,
you have that thing of adapting. So I went along with my little notebook, big flamingo notebook. Do you remember that?
I remember it. I remember it.
And had all my numbers planned out, like word for word, like literally 1 to 8, what moves we're doing, because obviously in dance we count in eights. Everything planned out, and you do get there. And I remember teaching on the first day. I feel like, did we do? Oh, I can't even remember what we did. I know we did Mamma Mia last year first when I got there, but we had.
No, we did Lion King the first time I did it with you. And
I had a whole contemporary like
yeah,
thing planned out, and I remember being like,
amazing.
right, I need to change some of
Bowed out.
this.
Do you remember I bowed out? So I never
Yes,
actually performed Lion King because someone had to be the king at the end who literally just came on with the Queen, stood and sang. And it was between, you were like, oh, yourself and Kevin will do it. And you were like, Kevin can perform the first half of the tour and then you'll switch roles so Fearghal gets an opportunity to dance. And like halfway through the tour, I was like, oh, by the way, Kevin, let's just keep it the way it was. Because the choreography was hard. Kevin did amazing.
yeah, yeah. So you do have that thing of like you have to adapt, but I think that's your job as a choreographer, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
you have what you want to do, but you do have to make it work. Like there's no point me coming in and forcing people to do stuff and then it looking awful, because that doesn't look good for me either. So you do have to be quite quick at sometimes adapting. And I think that's something you get used to when you work on, like, obviously I've done a lot of numbers with like dance colleges that I work at and stuff. And there's always someone that gets injured and you have to respace stuff, or someone that's, you know, got a job and has to go away. And I think that's kind of good training for getting like you used to having to think quickly on your feet and go, right, this person do this person do this, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, you kind of touched on it there, but we said that we would discuss your process. Like when you're preparing or even in the rehearsal room, what is your process? What are the elements you kind of think about?
So I think obviously music is always a big one for me. And like I normally just listen to it a lot and see if I can pick anything out in it that
Okay.
you want to showcase, or, you know, have a big
Yeah.
like dance break bit. And I'll have a little think about what I kind of want it to look like, if I want like a lot of people on at first, if I want like, you know, not, I don't know, a few people and then it builds or whatever. And then what I
Okay.
normally do, sometimes I'll set up my GoPro in my lounge, normally in my pajamas, to be honest, so this footage will never be seen. And I like literally just improvise around to the music and see what happens.
Oh, I
Or
love that.
I'll tell you another weird process that I have. I think because I'm quite like go, go, go all the time, I find it quite hard to focus sometimes. The best place that I ever get stuff done is sitting on a train, listening to music and being like, yeah, and I just scribble in my notebook. So I always have a notebook with me, because I literally will be
Okay.
like, okay, and that I want that to happen there, and I want that to happen there. And then sometimes I get home and I try it and I'm like, oh my God, that does not work at all. What was I thinking? Or like stuff I'm like, yes. So again,
Yeah.
during lockdown, I've been like, oh my God, I know we're not supposed to travel, but should I go and get on a train so that I can concentrate? Like, honestly, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
train's the best office.
I love that about environment because I think it's so important, especially in lockdown at the moment, about your environment and how it does or doesn't make you creative. And that's really cool because you can find creative spaces. And someone, I think it's your friend Chris, just sit here and you choreograph in the park. I love that.
And you've met because he came to watch the show in New
Yeah.
York.
Yeah, we met in New
Right.
Jersey.
New Jersey.
Um, and I have to say this here because I did say this to you, I think I did text you, but in the school I teach in, they did Grease. And the head of music was like, Fearghal, you've danced before. And I was like, yeah, yeah. And she was like, would you choreograph Grease? And I was like, yeah, okay. So absolute imposter syndrome. Walked in and I basically thought the moves that you had taught me just all mixed up and put to new music. So, so I call myself a Pippa Holliday dancer
That was like
and choreograph.
That's like when I had to choreograph Grease for World of Musicals. Obviously, I'd done Grease, so your automatic thing is to go to that choreography, and you're like, no, that is plagiarism. You can't take someone
Yeah,
else. So, yeah.
yeah. I did text you though and say I'm plagiarizing you, by the way, because I'm out of my depth.
Was
But it
anyone
was
else,
fun.
Fabian?
This is it. I literally, I will say it's Pippa's choreography. No, but it was amazing. And it was cool to think about process in a different way because I
Hmm.
obviously think about music in a completely different way. And I
Yeah.
learned about that when working under you was actually when you're dancing and singing at the same time, because I think about music in one way. And then when we learned the choreography, I was thinking about it in a different way. And then bringing them together, like my mind was mushed. But let's chat about Magic to Do.
Oh, yay.
So, what an incredible project, Magic to Do. I put it up on the Instagram today. It was for Citizens of Song. It was a virtual online concert, and you choreographed a piece to Magic to Do from Pippin. Um, I really wanted to get into because this title of the song, Magic, in it, and it was quite magical in like an empty theater. The lighting was quite low. The dancers were like gorgeous, and it was a magical moment. What was that experience like for you, preparing it and also recording it? Did it feel that magical as to what we got to see?
I don't know if my dancers would agree with me screaming at them, but no, I think they would. Um, so we were really lucky because we had a bit of a nightmare. Obviously, it was coming towards the end of the first lockdown, so there were things that were open for professional reasons, but trying to find a theatre to do it in was hellish, to be honest. It was so
Okay.
hard. And once, like what you were talking about, vision, I had that like vision in my head that I wanted it in an empty theatre because there's so much about, there were all these campaigns at the time in London about Save the Arts and all these
Yeah.
pictures. I'm seeing photos of empty theatres and I was like, oh, it's so sad. But it's also that thing of like, it's so beautiful. You know, when you see a picture of a massive theatre and you're like, oh, God. And I think as well, this is another thing about being a choreographer, just to slide this in. Another process that is my favorite thing, I love like opening night and I love show, but I love tech and like being in rehearsal. And I think you do that thing where you walk into a theatre and you're like, oh, I think as a performer of any
Yeah.
kind, when you're rehearsing, you go in and you're like, the first day in the theatre, you're always like, wow. And it's not that thing of having the energy and the people in there. It is that thing of like,
Yeah.
it's just such a magical building. And yeah, so
Yeah, I love finding quiet places in a theater, like during tech, or like you say, when you're coming, if you're on tour coming in that day. I love just sneaking off, kind of exploring the building and finding a quiet place to like meditate and do like a little gentle warm up. And there is something really special about it.
yeah. But I remember I just had that like thought in my head because it was so like at that time all the art stuff. And I remember like my the producer who was doing it, Rebecca, said to me like, you can literally just film it in a studio if you want. And I was like, no way. Like if I'm doing this, I'm doing it properly. And we
Yeah.
managed to get, obviously the theatre that we had is in the round. So that's
Oh,
like it's scanning as well, where you could see like the audience, like well not the audience, but the seats. And oh yeah, it was great.
it's
It was
amazing. Do you want to
watching it. I was like,
do you want to call out the dancers? Because obviously these interviews are about lifting up the arts
yeah.
and other artists.
So I think two of them are on here. One of them is definitely on here because she's just commented. So Cassie Davenport is just down there. Tony Speak, who was, I did see her join earlier, and Ellie Higton. So yeah, so
Unreal.
book them, people. If anyone's looking for dance, I think. Well, as I
There,
said, my best friend worked with me on it. He filmed, and he's an incredible dancer. He works all the time in London, and he definitely works on a more visual aspect of performing than I do. Lee Bridgman, his name is as well. I'm sure some of you will have heard of him.
yeah.
And I got him to do the filming for me because obviously, like, we didn't have a big budget. It was a charity concert, so I was like, I can't hire like a big videographer. So I thought I'll get my friend who has all this experience in creative directing and being behind the screen and stuff, and he was great doing it as well. And that
Do
really made it
you do you think
magical.
because he was a dancer, he knows how to shoot
Yeah.
your
And
vision?
yeah, and well, we know each other so well. We've been best friends for about 14 years and we trained
Wow.
everything. And I've done a lot, well, no, he's done a lot of theatre as well, and his CV is to die for. But obviously my experience, I've done a few little TV things, but nothing like what he's done. So I kind of was like, I need that eye with me as well, and someone that knows. He'll like lay on the floor with the gimbal and like move, and I'm like, I would never think of doing that. Or so that was good too. Yeah.
I love it. I love when people get creative like that. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And speaking of dancers, there is a dancer who's very special to your heart, who you have mentioned in this interview so far, and that's your sister, who did pass away quite recent. And I did call you up and say, I would love to create the space for you to speak about her, and say whatever you want. I don't want to ask any questions. I want it to come from you. But I did want to share one quote, and you wrote this quote on one of your Instagrams about her. And you said, I've always said I dance every step for you, and I always will forevermore. And that was for your sister, Harriet. Do you want to tell us about her?
Yeah, so, no, I'm all right, actually. I was like, ooh.
And
like,
just stop when you want.
No, I'll be okay. We grew up, obviously, the whole time. It was just us two sisters. So dancing the whole time. And we basically did the entire route together. Like, as I said earlier, that's where my choreography started. We used to choreograph duets together and be, and perform them. And then we started doing well, because there was always a fight, actually, when we were kids. Our dance teacher was desperate for us to duet. And we were like, I'm not doing a duet with her. Like, I want to do one with my best friend. She wanted to do one with her best friend, all of that. And then I think when we just make them up at home, we'd be like, oh, this is actually decent. Like, we should do this in a competition, and then started doing well. And my mum was like, I've told you so many times you should be doing this. And then same journey, like she went to Italia Conti as well. And then graduated, and about a year later got really ill with ME. So she lived over in Oz with my parents. And it's just that thing of like, I think we all have those days, especially through lockdown. The beginning of lockdown, there were so many days when I was like, do I even want to do this anymore? And that thought has never crossed my mind in my head before. Like, my life has literally been dance, 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 dance. And I love it. And I never, ever would want to do anything else. But I think you get those points, don't you, where you're really low and you're like, nah. And I'd never experienced it before. And obviously, I think lockdown has a lot to do with it. Like, her passing away had a lot to do with it as well. But then there's that other side of me that's like, I think about it and I'm like, I am so lucky that I get to do what I want to do every single day. And I had to, almost watch her for these 8 years that she was sick, not being able to do any of those dreams that she'd always wanted. So I think that's always something that will make me go, do you know what? You're feeling shit and it's bad, but like, you are doing this and you are going to carry on, not just for you, but for her as well. So yeah, that's my take on it.
I love that. And we are going to dedicate this episode to her. So obviously we didn't know if we were going to speak about her, but we are dedicating this episode to her. So this one's for Harriet Holliday, which is gorgeous. But let's talk about your other talent. Here we go. Yes. So Pippa makes these bespoke festival hats. Yes, I love that. One's quite similar to mine. So I actually have a Pippa Holliday bespoke hat, which I've never gotten to wear. Because the year I ordered it for Pride, it came late, and then the next year, coronavirus. So it's still sitting in its box, waiting for its big reveal. How did you start making these incredible hats? I just love them.
I'm actually going to have to give credit again to Chris, who commented earlier, because Chris, we go to festivals every year. We go to Wilderness Festival every year, Mighty Hoopla, all these like wonderful festivals where you can just get dressed up. Obviously, I like costumes. I'm a dancer, so that's exciting. And Chris has been to Burning Man a few times, and at Burning Man, everyone wears these. And we were like, we're going to start wearing these on the English festival circuit. Oh, look, there he's commented. And we looked them up and we were like, okay, so they cost about £300. So we were like, we can make that. Yeah, they
Wow.
literally cost hundreds of pounds, and we were like, we can do that. So we went to like charity shops, and where else do we get them? There's a shop in Soho that sells them, and they're like those like army military hats basically.
Yeah.
And all you do is buy all the gems and all the like bits and get your glue gun, and I mean they take hours, hours. So I kind of get why they're so expensive, because they take so long. You get loads of hot glue gun burns and you're like, oh my God. But I find it really
Yeah.
therapeutic, and I actually really love it. Like I'd quite like to launch a mini side business.
I have said this to you. You so should, because they're so good. And like, and Pippa sent it to me, and she had like spare kind of jewels and for me in case they kind of fell apart. And I cannot wait. I'm saving it for a special day. It'll probably be Pride 2023 at this stage, but it is still, I look after it so much and I can't wait to wear it. A few people have taken it out of my room and worn it around the house
Yeah,
while in my old flat.
around the house, especially
Yeah.
during lockdown.
They're so awesome. Pippa, tell us what the arts mean to you and the world.
I mean, for me, the arts has been my whole life. As I said to you earlier, I started dancing when I was 2 years old, and
Yeah.
I fell in love with it the second. I mean, I can't remember, to be honest, but it sounds good, doesn't it? I remember being like a little kid though, and that's all I wanted to do, dance. And I think for me, there is no other option. Like, it means everything to me. And I think even looking at our world at the moment and the kind of government we have in the UK and stuff, that's very streamlined on like, you know, not really for the arts and supporting the arts as much as they should be. But
Yeah.
how would anyone get through everyday life without the arts? You know, even if you're not a supporter of, you know, you don't go to the almost, I hate this word as well, but like the elitist art forms, like you haven't ever been to the ballet or things that people say, oh, the arts, and they talk about it like that, you know, the opera, to art galleries. That doesn't mean you're not a fan of the arts. Do you watch Netflix? Do you wear clothes that are designed by fashion designers? Do you read a newspaper that is like laid out by a graphic designer? Do you listen to music? Everyone does that. Everything. Your house is designed by an artist. Like
Yeah.
every part of life, the arts is vital for, and to be honest, one of the most important things. And I just
So agree.
that's what I think people need to remember. And also just open yourself up to other art forms, and you never know what like you might enjoy.
Yeah.
Now if any time is the time to do it, when there's so much available, like I mean not in real life, but there's so much access to stuff on TV and on the computer, and you know.
Exactly. You may end up choreographing a school musical as an opera singer, you know?
There we go.
These things can happen. Pippa, you are absolutely amazing. I am so delighted that you were up for coming on and chatting to me. And yes, thank you so much.
Thank
And it's been
you.
so lovely to see you. Oh,
Yeah.
not at all. I'm honored to have you on. And thank you everyone for joining us today. It's been quite an exciting day. Let's Talk About the Arts has hit 500 followers, so I was all delighted with myself coming on here. So thanks for following us, and next week we're going to have episode 5, which is amazing. So you know, tune in if you're out there and you don't actually follow the page. But Pippa, you are a star. You're one of my favorite people. I love that you opened up this kind of dance world to me, and I have done a lot of dancing since our time.
I know.
So thank you.
Still do that double pirouette, because I'll be upset if you can't.
I can still do it. I do it in the kitchen regularly, you know. Always happens. We're trying to make it a triple. Love you so much. Talk to you soon. Thank you, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a fabulous week. Bye.
Bye.